Bart staff, thank you for joining us once again. Quiet down the back, stop chatting, stop chewing on that gum, get rid of that paper dart, sit up straight, fold your arms, cross your legs, other way around if you like. Today, my very special guest is Mr. Jonathan Griffiths, who likes to lift weights and eat a sensible, species-appropriate diet. So, that being the case, Jonathan, tell us all about it.
Hi, Bart. Thanks for having me on. My name is Jonathan, as you mentioned. I'm also going to the handle Composition Consultant online. I have around 14 years of experience practicing in nutrition and training as a bodybuilder. I've won several shows across the UK and have always been fascinated by science and the process of creating my best physique. So academically, I've completed a course in medical science and I have a bachelor's degree in human nutrition. Along this path, I noticed a number of interesting theories around these topics popping up. So I've endeavoured to uncover the truth. I can speak from experience in the plant-based community, as I used to manage one of the leading health food stores in the country. However, I become quite a strong advocate for the role of animal food in the human diet. So, for those that don't know, Bart and I have both suffer with autistic spectrum disorder, and the issue with extreme mental and physical fatigue. So, mine's more CFS, his is more fibromyalgia. That's a topic for another day, but to get to the point, I'm going to be talking about bodybuilding whilst on an animal-based diet. This includes the aspects of both training and nutrition. To detail a few key features of the diet, I would first state that a carnivorous way of eating is the omission of fibre and carbohydrates from the consumption of plant-based food. I've managed to successfully embrace this diet by using different methods to lower body fat, whilst maintaining and potentially gaining muscle. I'm going to quickly go through some key factors which brought me to this thought process. So firstly, when I was around 10 years old, I fasted for 2 weeks on water. So no food, no gum, nothing. The most nutrient-dense food I was consuming was a drop of lemon juice in water sometimes. That was it. During this period, which may surprise people, definitely to my surprise at least, is I did not lose any body weight. So it doesn't make sense. I thought I dropped some water. I'm 10 years old. I don't know a lot, but what I did, so compliance wasn't the issue here. I was drinking water, eating nothing. That sort of led me to believe there's more at play here than just the energy equation. You know what they say about calories in, calories out. So a few years on, I went, the age of 16, I believe it was, I competed a bodybuilding competition. My nutrition protocol was, you may laugh, 5 cans of tuna a day, a salad, which was lettuce, probably not spinach, I wasn't that daft at the time, a fried egg. I didn't use oil, so I just have tuna in a saucepan, put an egg in it, cook it, done. Yes, and a protein shake after the gym, which was just whey protein, nothing too unique for a bodybuilder sort of thing. I used a calorie calculator at the time, and I'd estimate how much energy I'll be taking in, how much I was burning. So it worked out something like 1,500 calories intake. I dread to think how much I was burning. At the time, want to make it clear, I was around 10% body fat, body weight of 85 kilograms. So I was pretty decent shape. Bear in mind at the time I was about 5'11", 6 foot. I was doing, intensive weight training regime 5 days a week, about an hour, 45 to 90 minutes of cardio a day. That was slow paced, heart rate around about 130 beats per minute. To my surprise, I'd get to maybe like the 3-month mark during that 4 to 5 month period, and no weight would drop off, so nothing would come off. Body fat would not lower. Again, my compliance was impeccable. If I stick to a diet, I am on the diet. It doesn't alter, especially if it's for bodybuilding purposes. So again, like my previous story, I realised there's more at play here than just the calorie equation. It's led me to believe. It's kind of led me to pursue the topic of human nutrition at university. Often most people would say, I'm doing everything X diet says and I haven't lost a pound. You know, we've all heard it from maybe our mums or our families, spouses maybe. I wanted to find out why. I was basically interested in that. I think that my hormone profile at the time must have been kaput, which means broken basically, or in such a state that would not work in my favour. Around the same time, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and depression. Again, this suggests for the fact that the hormonal levels within my body were not in my favour. I started puberty at age 9. I was growing stronger at age 9. I had hairy legs, you know, the lot. I experimented with various diets at different macronutrient ratios, different foods, intermittent fasting, and just sort of came to the same outcomes. It was the same, like, stumbling point. I couldn't get below 8 to 10% body fat. It seemed that it wasn't until I had better control over my mood that I had more manageable output and knew the importance of animal foods. And then I had an aha moment. Something about this calorie equation just did not work. I began researching to an obsessive degree to find studies on thyroid output reducing in response to body mass and energy intake, how macronutrients affect the energy in-out equation, and so on. So last year, I successfully got what's known in the bodybuilding world as striated glutes. It sounds bizarre. This is in March 2021. This is basically a state where the body fat percentage is so low that commonly the last place to actually lose body fat is in the gluteal region. It's quite a feat, in my opinion, given the fact I was training at my home gym with limited equipment during lockdowns where everything was closed for some reason. And was just walking the dog each day. There was no, running around, sprinting, hill sprints, 2 hours of exercise, nothing like that. This is using a carnivore diet with around 4,000 calories, I believe, if you were to calculate it using the labels. I had a tapered approach to this, so as I finished my off-season bulking period of around 5,500 calories, this is high carb, high protein, probably high fat as well. I dabbled with the carnivore diet for periods of a few weeks in the past, to good effect, so I thought I'll try it again. So the diet consists of something like 500 grams of protein a day. That's grams of actual, that's probably 2 to 2.5 kilos of chicken a day if you were to work it out that way, to give you an idea of the volume of food. 150 to 200 grams of fat. Just want to make it clear, this is not a plan I'm offering to viewers, so please don't follow this and use this as a prescription for a diet protocol. But what I did was I slowly tapered the fat content down and was achieving incredible fat loss. My food sources were things like chicken, liver, eggs, cheese, fish, beef, turkey, lamb, the lot. I'd include dairy. It wasn't something I chose to omit. I just quite liked it. The outline of the system I was using was basically the PE diet, which is the Protein Energy Diet by Ted Naiman. I was at the time practicing it without realising it or who he was. I knew that bodybuilders would often carb deplete, eat high protein for the last few weeks before a contest. I figured, why not just do that, providing my energy level was sufficient enough to train, and at that time it was. So now I'm going to briefly go over some key features of my training methodology. So first I want to explain that the key feature of resistance training for me is to stimulate contractile structures within the muscle tissue in a specific manner. For example, if training your chest, this means to maximize the contractile tension of purely your chest under maximal effort, regardless of the repetition range. We know that muscle groups don't work singularly. For example, in a bench press, both the shoulders, triceps, lats, and many other muscle groups will also be worked. They're stabilizers, ancillary muscle groups, so not primary drivers, but they're in there, We can also shift the tension more into the chest fibers, so there's a few mental cues that I might use. I won't go through all of them, but as an example, bicep curl. So you lean towards or position your body in such a way that tension is going through your bicep with as little external or internal rotation in the shoulder girdle. I'll try and explain. So you lean into the weight. So you got your dumbbell here in this hand. It'd be down here and up here. But the problem with having your body straight up parallel is things get in the way. There's too much twisting. It's like to like eliminate that sort of inertia and like try not to overtrain and use the shoulder muscles. Next thing to understand is that muscle groups have what's called an active range, so you don't want to go outside of these. Basically, that's how injuries can occur in some instances. The active range of the bicep is a neutral grip in the lengthened position, which is back here. So obviously be somewhat parallel to your body back here. And the contracted position is somewhere around up here. I'm not very flexible anymore, but I think you probably get the picture. It's basically the supinated position in front of your body. To achieve this working range, active range, what you might call, you have to use often more than one exercise. It's not essential, but oftentimes it's better to use a mixed range of motion. Otherwise, we'd all do bench press, squats, deadlifts, and be Ronnie Coleman. So basically, yeah, the idea is to use both ends of the biceps. You've got the biceps brachii here and here. This one touches close down the brachiodorsolaris, and this one is just the inner head of the biceps, basically. So you'd want to contract the biceps here and finish back here, as I mentioned earlier. The next thing to consider when designing a program is to work out how much and how often you should perform a given exercise. There is scientific evidence to suggest that the overall training volume is what's important. For example, would 2 sets of bicep curls 5 times a week be as beneficial as 10 sets in one day? The literature, however, is limited in some aspects. They're relying on training intensity perception of individuals. So what that means is different participants in the studies will have a different idea of how hard they're working. It's just innate in human nature. So you could be seizing the same training load of 100 kilos, but one person could think they're doing more than the other, even though they're, could be genetically identical. I'd say in my humble experience in seeing thousands of physique athletes train, they tend to sway towards around 2 sessions per week per muscle group. It really does depend that it's very hard to prescribe a specific workout program. Athletes that become more advanced, for example, elite bodybuilders at the Olympic level have already accrued maximal levels of muscular development. They can actually retain their tissue at a lower frequency of training. It's been seen with pro athletes over the decades. I want to obviously mention that these are performance-enhanced athletes. That is a slight difference amongst, well, the difference between a lot of people that are probably watching this video and the pro sort of thing. So you got Brandon Curry, Sean Roden, Phil Heath, Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, and even Arnold to some extent. They're all people that have won a Olympia title, which is, the elite of the elite in bodybuilding. It's called, it's like a bro split. I'm sure the viewers of this conversation, not elite bodybuilders, have mentioned, so, don't use this methodology as a singularity, sort of use it as an idea of how much you should be training in relation to them. Next, to briefly comment on training volumes over the week. So I've seen the majority of studies suggesting somewhere between 6 and 10 sets of exercise per week. So this might be, but this is obviously like per muscle group. So, so you could do, I don't know, a set of 4 one day, a set of 3 another day, a set of 3 the other day, or break it up how you like, basically. That should be sufficient to stimulate new muscle tissue. Where you lie as an individual on that spectrum, however, is dependent on a number of key factors. I always find recovery to be like the bottleneck in training. So what that means to people, recovery is a very broad term. So I'd say it's basically the ability to sufficiently rest, eat, sleep, as needed to give your body the time to recuperate what it needs to, then use the same intensity in the next workout. You've also got to consider, are you training with maximal intensity every set, or is it just some sets? Do you have injuries which would indicate that reduced training volume or loads would allow for better recovery? These are just some of the key features to think about before designing a program. We've got a few more things to mention. The repetition ranges. I believe that a wide variety of repetition ranges can be used to create the desired outcome. My personal experience as an individual seeing firsthand and with others training, most people see results in somewhere between 6 and 20 repetitions. Much like Bart's explanation of running and the so-called thresholds of training adaptation, in muscle tissue it works in a similar way. So we recruit muscle fiber types in the order of slow to fast twitch. So with someone training even with just one maximal intensity repetition, so Eddie Hall pulling 500 kilos off the ground, he will initially first be simulating slow twitch fibers momentarily, as well as the fast twitch, which will be included, near enough immediately, because you're not going to do a lot if you're just using half your muscle fibers to pull a world record deadlift. So what I explained before, that 2 sets of 8 is the optimal bang for your buck in regards to training for muscular hypertrophy, and it's basically the most efficient way. He is correct. Obviously, the literature does say that the most muscle fiber recruitment is within the first and second set of an exercise. Then beyond that point, it quickly tapers. It's basically diminishing returns. It's a bit like the when you stack up drugs. You can use 1 paracetamol, 2, 3. 3 is not going to be much better than 2, and so on. So repetition amount of 8 is only useful, as Bart said, if an individual is actually training with maximal intensity. So they're doing 8 and not 1 repetition more. It means they are doing 8. So the positive proportion of the repetition will not go to 9, obviously. The range I've suggested are based on how high up the scale of intensity that an individual can achieve. I.e., the person doing more sets but less intensity would be training inefficiently, but may get similar results to the person doing less sets but maximal intensity. This scalability is very individual dependent, and the factors I mentioned earlier, recovery, it all takes part in it. I'll mention that studies suggest we can typically recruit up to only 60-70% of our muscle fibers. Not only this, but our muscle fiber ratio is very, very little. A common misconception is that someone like Usain Bolt has all fast twitch muscle fibers. We've all seen him run. We think, he's made of all fast twitch muscle fibers. Yes, he may have more than most people, but the difference in demographics has been shown to be only roughly, I believe, 5 to 10%. I may be wrong, but it's a small amount, much more than what you think. I hope that explains my thoughts on training, a little bit towards nutrition. And Bart, I welcome you to ask any questions if you have any.
Yeah, so for me, the questions that kind of come up are, starting with the diet side of things first. Describe your current diet to us. What do you eat now on a sort of daily, weekly basis? How far up the carnivore scale are you? How many carbs are going in? Give us the sort of full rundown if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah. So the macronutrient ratio would be something like, as of recently, it's been close to 55% protein. I'd estimate around 2 to 3% carbohydrate, and the rest being fat. I did experiment for a month, basically going through like a recomposition sort of phase. I'm trying to see what benefits there are to a high fat versus a high protein approach. I did notice my strength was more consistent using the higher fat approach. It wasn't like I wasn't recovering on a slightly less protein but high fat. I was recovering just fine, and my energy in the gym seemed to be a lot more consistent than it is at the moment. Obviously, I didn't do a washout period between the previous diet and my current diet, so it's quite hard to tell independently which is better for long-term sort of fat loss results. But my trend regressions over the last 6 to 8 weeks, I'd say, because I'm not competing at the moment, I don't take it quite seriously, but I'd say that probably 95 to 98% of my effective energy intake is from animal-based food. The majority of the time, my carbohydrates coming from eggs, funnily enough. So yeah, it's not a big deal really. There have been 2 occasions where I've had either mashed potatoes or chips.
Hand your card in, Jonathan.
Just with family.
Hand in your card and line up for a ceremonious beating and public shaming and stuff. Mashed potatoes, indeed. Okay. So I've interviewed Stan Efferding several times over the years, and he obviously has a dietary program to sell. He has a book to sell. He has, you know, that to do. But he's also quite adamant that there is no way in the world that someone will be successful and build a decent amount of muscle mass if they do not consume a significant amount of carbohydrate in their diet. What do you say to that?
I would say the same thing Yellow Ted would say, which is bollocks.
Yeah.
It's certainly possible without carbohydrate, especially in significant amounts. Okay, you know, Paul Saladino. I find you can leverage fat to a point which is tolerable. However, I'd say there is almost a rate limiting factor in the extent you can actually consume enough energy to sustain someone, i.e. Eddie Hall in his competitive season, when he's wearing I don't know, 150 plus kilos. That might be a bit more difficult. But I think for the average person watching this video, even myself, yes, you can gain muscle on protein and fat as the only constituents of your diet.
Well, I mean, N=1, we're looking at it, aren't we? Because you clearly have some muscle mass on you, and you claim not to be eating much carbohydrate at all, and we believe you. So Stan must be wrong, unfortunately. Ted wanted to say hello, by the way.
Yeah, I think so. Hello, Ted.
So there's Ted for you. All right.
I've got my
okay,
Ted
so
in the back as well. I forget. You can see just there.
Got it. That's fine.
It's not bad.
All right. So from there we go to some of the specifics around the lifting program, and you've kind of alluded to many of those quite well already. Let's say you're in a phase of maintenance, so you're looking to hold on to gains that you've developed in terms of your muscle mass, and you're possibly looking for a bit of recomp. I don't know, maybe it's 6-8 weeks until a show or something like that, and you go into the gym. Okay, tell us about your splits. How are you doing your splits? And then give us an idea of how many sets and reps you are personally doing, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah. So I'm doing at the moment between 4 and 5 sessions per week. I find if you're really training for maximum intensity, 5 can be a bit on the difficult side. Especially as my energy intake for the moment is very low for me. I don't usually, so I don't usually put myself on a diet of calories of 2.5 to 3,000. It's usually significantly more. But looking through my notes, it's something like it's basically a push-pull legs program. Effectively training every body part twice every maybe 8-9 days. I don't like to train more than 2 days consecutively. A workout for me, if it was maybe say a push workout, so that's chest, shoulders, triceps. That might be one warm-up set on an incline chest press of some sort. I tend to prefer machines at this point. Hoisting up big weights without a spotter, you waste a lot of energy getting the weight up here, then you press it up, then you got to then find a way of getting it down again. I'd rather just get balls to the walls with a machine that I can just drop and it's not going to kill me. So yeah, I do find I do one warm-up set. That's 15 to 20 reps. Perceived exertion, I'd probably say 80%. So it's quite a hard set, but it's not, you know, terribly difficult. The following 2 sets might be, I say anywhere between like 6 and 15. Depends what I feel like that day. I've not got great joints, so it does depend on the body part I'm training as well. But I take them to absolute failure where I cannot perform a single more what do they call it? I train to technical failure, so I cannot lift the weight anymore without having to use inertia of some sort. Then I usually do a secondary exercise that might be a fly, just to target a muscle group which is hard to reach towards, so like the upper chest. Just shoulder press, a side raise. So these are all usually 2 2 to 3 sets. So usually 1 warm-up, 2 working sets.
Yeah.
Then usually 2 tricep exercises, so an overhead and a kickback or extension of some sort. So that'd be a push one, anyway. Do you want me to explain the others, or is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. So you've got basically a 3-way split there. Push, pull, and legs on another day, and you're doing push, pull on legs all in one. By the sounds of it, and it sounds pretty much like what you're saying is 1 warm-up set, 20 reps or so, fairly intense, but, not stupid. And then you're doing 2 working sets. How many reps did you say around about for those? You say to failure, but what is that?
I think it's around like 6 to 12, maybe 15. So usually it's 6 to 12, somewhere around there.
Okay. All right. And when you say you're failing to technical failure, yeah, we get that. You get to the point where there's a catching point in every range of motion of every joint for every muscle or compound muscle group that works across a joint, where it'll get to a certain point where you'll try to push past a certain point in that lift and you'll lock out there. You won't drop the weight straight away, but you won't be able to move it beyond that point, and you have to use some kind of body motion to bust through that sticking point. So that's a technical failure rather than absolute muscular fatigue. Okay. So
that's right, yeah.
It sounds like you don't necessarily, in the maintenance phase and all of that, you're not necessarily pushing as hard as you might do during an absolute hypertrophy phase. Is that correct, or is that not right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So in that phase, when you're looking to put mass on, you're looking to rip yourself up. What's the methodology there? Yeah. What differs between that and your maintenance phase?
So I find, like I mentioned earlier, the bottleneck in a lot of training for me is the recovery aspect. So if I was to use inertia, say on say a standing dumbbell curl, alternating or both hands at the same time. If I was to swing it up, I've got a spine disease, so it's not really going to work. It's not going to help me out much. So what I may do is add an intensifier. So I may do a rest pause set. So say I was doing technical failure to 10 repetitions. I might then hold at the bottom, maybe 5 to 10 seconds, or I might count a few breaths. Then I'll do maybe 2 or 3 more, rest a bit, 2 or 3 more, basically till the last repetition can't be performed. But that's the way I'd add to it. So it's a way of almost adding volume without adding risk, I find.
Sure, okay. So as a kind of take home for young players, if you like, in terms of the building of the body beautiful, if you like, in terms of the most muscle mass possible, and et cetera, there is this interplay between volume of training, numbers of sets, numbers of reps, and intensity of training, percentage of 1 rep maximum that you are pushing, for example, or pulling, as the case may be. Of those two things, we know that there is an interplay and there are different ways to skin a cat, and you absolutely can gain muscle mass doing 500 sets of 1 billion repetitions with no weight. Absolutely. We also understand that you absolutely can build the same muscle mass or better with 2 sets of 8 at 8 RM maximum weight. Which of those do you think is the most important? Do you think it's volume under your belt, or do you think it's intensity, how much weight you've shoved around?
I've had this question so many times. It's basically, it's almost like the question, what's better? High weight, high intensity, low amount of sets, or high sets, low weight?
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it comes down to intensity, because you've got to provide that stimulus to the muscle to grow.
Yep.
It's just not gonna work doing 100 repetitions of bodyweight squats. But you won't see people walking around with giant 35-inch thighs that are squatting for 100 repetitions. You'll see Tom Platz, for example, giant legs. The bodybuilder from
That's
the past.
my waist measurement, for shit's sake. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like,
inches.
that's a huge leg.
Yeah.
All these people can squat massive amounts, and they try fucking hard.
Yeah.
I think that's the crucial factor here. The amount of effort you can put into it.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so what's your body weight now? What's your sort of fat percentage looking like? How close would you be right now if I said, okay, show in 6 weeks? What would have to happen?
I've got into contest shape before in 6 to 8 weeks from my current shape quite easily. My current body weight is 112.2 kilograms, and body fat, I'd estimate, I've not been too handy with the body fat calipers recently. I broke them, but I'd probably estimate around 12% body fat.
Okay, so pretty lean. So do you maintain a fairly show-ready physique most of the time then? So you're not that far away at the worst of times. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'd say there's not really any reason for a male bodybuilder to go above 15% body fat, and that's the top end of what many would be going at. When you sort of accrue that much muscle mass, it's hard to get fat. You know, it's not fat, but but in a bodybuilder's body beautiful sort of standpoint, it is fat.
Yeah. Okay. So final question from me today is around the spectre, if you like, the question that everyone has asked that's bodybuilding. I'm not going to ask it, but I'll phrase it this way. What, if any, kind of supplementation goes on in your regimen?
Mine, that's a fair question. Currently I'm off cycle, so that means no hormonal medications or drugs. But usually it would be something along the lines of decadrobolin. I'd use probably between 3, maybe 4 milliliters a week. And I'd use that as a standalone, like hormone sort of thing. Some bodybuilders use liver toxic orals. I don't believe them too much. I think they have a place right at the very end before a contest preparation, but not if you're trying to really grow muscle. I think they can impact your sort of your ability to eat, basically. I use things like pre-workouts as well, if you want to talk about natural things. Well, natural as in like a caffeine, creatine, over-the-counter sort of stuff as well.
Okay, all right. And you're not necking tubs and tubs of protein powders and whey protein and BCAAs and all this kind of stuff, or?
All the BCAAs? Nah, I'm doing probably 1 protein shake a day of, it's about 60 grams total, the actual weight of the scoop.
Right.
I just quite like it, to be honest. It's not a completely clean carnivore sort of food, but I've not removed it and added it to an effect where I can say it's made a difference or not. But if I was doing an experiment, yeah, I'd be able to conclude and say, yes, it's helpful, no, it's not, sort of thing.
Sure. Okay. And have you come across epicatechin?
Yeah, it's a supposedly myostatin inhibitor found in green tea extract, something like that. Yeah.
So have you tried that at all?
But not used it. I'd be skeptical about anything that comes from a plant for that sort of thing. May do something, but it's almost like if it's going to put your, say it's a testosterone booster or whatever plant extract it is, if it's going to put your levels at that much, you might as well just take the real thing. That's been clinically tried and tested, sort of thing.
Cool. And I'm going to assume that you've never touched the juice.
Oh, of course I have. Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, I was being a bit facetious there.
Decadrobolin. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So these people that say, I'm natty, and they're huge. What do you say to that? I mean, is that even possible?
If I'm honest, you don't see many people that are natural. There's a study, I can't remember where it's from. It's from maybe 2 to 3 decades back. What they did was they basically measured all the pro bodybuilders at the time. So these were all natural bodybuilders. They weren't taking any drugs, sort of thing. And they measured how big they would get. And now the elite of the elite. And there's a certain, I believe it's like a wrist to waist ratio or weight ratio,
Yeah.
and how big their arms and legs and so forth could be. They seem quite consistent, and that seems to be consistent with what I've seen in natural bodybuilding competitions as well. You do get anomalies, so you'll get a guy with like 21-inch arms. That's about it. You don't get a guy with 21-inch arms, 60-inch chest, and it just doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah.
There's a limit there, yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. All right. I mean, yeah, at one point, an accusation was fired at me by one Harley Johnson, an Australian cyclist of no repute whatsoever from Adelaide, who calls himself Durian Rider. We just call him Douchebag Rider. And he suggested that I was juicing, in which case I want my fucking money back, frankly. You know, 'cause, you know, no, dear oh dear. All right.
People said that about your recent transformation as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure, Jonathan. I do appreciate your time very much and your willingness to share your knowledge and experience in this area with us. I hope that it's useful for folks who want to get some basic ideas. We do caveat all of that with, you know, nothing Jonathan has said was prescriptive in any way. It was just his experience, what he's doing. If you do want to get hold of Jonathan, can people do that, Jonathan? Do you do coaching, or is there some way they can get hold of you if they want to? Or?
I'm contactable, yeah. Instagram's probably the best method, so that would be composition_consultant. I've also got a website, compositionconsultant.com.
Excellent. All right. That's where you find Jonathan. If you want further input or you want to ask him some questions, don't take the piss, though. Offer him some money. I get a lot of people that want to send me questions and get free answers.
Yeah.
No, that's not how the world works. Dear oh dear. Okay, we thank you once again, Jonathan, for your time today. Appreciate it very much. Stick around the channel, everybody, because there's much more going on. Many, many more fine interviews, and also people who, believe it or not, are being wrong on the interwebs. I can't believe it carries on, but it does. See you then. Ciao.